Hi, I'm Jason McClellan. I'm a podcaster, author, TV personality, veteran UFO journalist, and a lover of punk rock music. And you're listening to Dead Hand Radio. All right.
How you doing, man?
Good. Nice to meet you, buddy.
Nice to meet you. I really appreciate you doing this, man. Welcome to Dead Hand Radio.
Absolutely, man. I am so excited to be here.
That's awesome. There's a lot more to what you do than I know. So, can you just give me a little bit of background on what you do and who you are?
Absolutely. I would be very happy to do that. So really, my start into the world of the weird, I'll describe it, really kind of is different than a lot of people, because a lot of people, it starts out as sort of a casual interest or a hobby. And for most people maintains that, that's all it ever is or ever becomes, or it, for the lucky few, it graduates into a profession. I started out the world of the weird in the world of UFOs as a profession, and it sort of found me. I was working for a company at a time doing media and marketing, and the owner of that company knew my background, knew my skill set, and started telling me this great idea he had to start a company all about UFOs and extraterrestrials. Now, who hears that and doesn't have their ears perk up right away? I mean, that just doesn't happen. So of course they said, that sounds awesome. Tell me more. And, after months of discussion and talking and putting things in motion, a company was started. We actually started a company that was a legitimate full-time company devoted 100% to UFOs and extraterrestrials. And this company became a full-fledged media company, which, we had a website that we updated daily with the latest news related to UFOs and extraterrestrials. We published an internationally distributed print magazine that you could find in grocery stores and airports and all over the place. That was really cool. And then, we also went into other media too, really into web media heavily, doing web series and podcasts and things like that. And it graduated into a lot of TV work and stuff too. So really, we started this company that became like the center, the go-to company for all things UFOs and extraterrestrial life. And, that was my full-time profession. I was, salaried to do this job. Benefits, everything. It was a real legitimate job. I know it doesn't sound like it, but this was a real company. I got paid for, about 6-7 years to do UFOs full time. And, that was amazing. But like I said, that was my introduction to it. That's how I got started. So, when I got hired to be part of this UFO company, I had to get up to speed pretty quickly because, outside of pop culture and science fiction, I didn't really know anything about UFOs. I had seen some UFOs at that point, but I didn't really know anything about UFO history. I didn't know any of the key players in the UFO research field. No knowledge going into it. So I had to, do a lot of self-education really fast to get up to speed. And the way I did that was reading lots of books, meeting with lots of people. And I was in the unique position because of the company I was with to meet in person with a lot of these key players in the UFO field. And we also acquired the largest annual UFO conference in the world. And by doing that, we were bringing in, every year, 20 plus, almost 30 different speakers who were, and are arguably the biggest movers and shakers, of that particular year within the UFO research community. So I had access to all of these people, really all the time, and developed a lot of, professional and personal relationships with all these guys and gals. So it really brought me up to speed very quickly and gave me an education that, a lot of people don't have the availability to do, the ability to have that sort of, one-on-one interaction with a lot of these people. And also, we had a gigantic library in the office with all sorts of UFO related books from, the past 40, 50 years. So it was a great resource. And certainly when I was writing articles for the magazine and doing podcasts and web series, we had great resources to pull from, either by looking into our own library and our own archives, or by getting on the phone or sending an email to some of the people who actually researched these cases back when they happened. So it was a really cool sort of introduction to the field of UFO research for me. So that started me in my UFO career. And like I said, that lasted for about 6 or 7 years. And while I was with this company, I certainly developed an interest and a love for all things strange. And that includes, monsters and local lore and ghosts and, anything strange. I'm a curious person, and I love exploring the strange and looking for those unanswerable things that we have on our planet, let alone the universe. So, I started exploring more some of the ghost stuff and things like that. But because of the company I was with, I was working under a non-compete agreement, and it really restricted a lot of the things I could do, including TV, which, as you mentioned, I did, quite a bit of TV work, with the History Channel, SciFi, Nat Geo, and that was all UFO related. But still, I was restricted heavily in what I could do and what I could, the projects I could participate in at the time because of the company I was with. But I started branching out into ghosts and other strange things because my restriction wasn't on other things; it was on UFO related stuff. So that fed my appetite for other strange things. And in doing so, Tom DeLonge from Blink 182 at the time reached out to me because he was, I interviewed him at that point. He was aware of my work, and he was starting to put the pieces together to form a new company focused on UFO related things and strange related things, which we now know as To the Stars, and grew into To the Stars Academy. But Tom contacted me and asked me to come and work for him and help him start this company. So that's what I did toward the end of my professional full-time UFO career, was help Tom DeLonge in creating content for this new company as it launched into becoming To the Stars. So that was really cool. And, then, after that, I sort of retired from professional work in the world of the weird. But once you get down that rabbit hole and have had the weird and wacky career that I've had to this point, I can't really escape it, nor do I want to. I've thought that I wanted to a few times here and there down the road, but it always pulls me back. It's been such a big part of my life, and I just, drawn by the mystery of it all. I can't leave it behind. So I still am very much involved. I do a UFO podcast. I have a strange media company now called Rogue Planet, and with myself and my colleagues, we do all of this stuff. We do ghost hunting, we write articles, we do podcasts, we do web series. And it's just a celebration of our shared love of all things weird. So, that's what I do. And I still work. I'm working on a UFO book right now. I wrote one UFO book before, but UFOs, because it was, my profession, and I spent so much time and energy, and I have so much love for the people in that field, that's always going to be my main focus, is UFOs. And it still is. I love it. I have so much fun with it.
Awesome. Well, that kind of brings me up to speed on the UFO and the weird, the world of the weird. You also, I think I read something on your website that you have an interest, or you've always had an interest in comic books and science fiction. Is that right?
Science fiction more so. Comic books, yes. I never really got into comic books as a diehard fan, just more as a casual observer, because I am an artistic person, a creative person. And from that standpoint, I love that medium. I love the art, combined with the story. So I love, the visuals, the aesthetic of graphic novels and comic books. And, when that translates to film, I'm just a fan of that medium, but not necessarily of any particular comic book series per se. But science fiction, absolutely. Science fiction, I guess, well, I don't know. I've never thought about where I would place it in my ranking, but I'm certainly a horror fan for sure when it comes to cinema. I love horror, but science fiction is either number one or number two. Yeah,
And they do cross paths quite a
they
bit.
do.
So
They
you could
do.
have a lot of the best science fiction movies are also horror.
Yeah.
So they cross paths quite a bit. Uh, Now the reason that I wanted to talk with you is because of, well, first of all, I talked with Shane Hurd a few months ago. He was a guest on the podcast to come on, and we talked. And but I had known of your work through the Skinwalker Ranch podcast series that you did.
Yeah, we did that as a combination audio podcast, and it also had the web series too on
Yeah,
YouTube. Yeah.
I watched that series every week. I was hoping you guys would continue it, but you're going to pick it up again when the new season comes out, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, Skinwalker Ranch is certainly a big interest of mine, and I got turned on to that certainly back, early in my UFO career. Reading George Knapp and Colin Kelleher's book about Search for the Skinwalker. That really, I mean, I'd heard about it before, but reading that, gave me all the details. And of course, George is a really good friend, and talking to him about it, talking to Colonel John Alexander, who was part of Bigelow's team on the ranch, and spent a lot of time there. So having been able to personally interact with some of these people makes it all the more real, I guess, for me. Just knowing some of the details about this strange and spooky place where it's sort of a hub for all things paranormal, for lack of a better term. And it's always been a place that, I'd like to go, and that will probably happen one of these days soon. And certainly the invitation has been extended, and it's one of the great things about, again, doing the podcast and the web series was, getting to know some of the guys on the ranch. And of course, Brandon, the current owner, it makes that more of a reality for me going forward. And that's always been a dream, to do a podcast from Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, that would be a dream. And to participate in the work that they're doing out there, I think it's fascinating.
Absolutely.
There's a recurring guest I've had um, on this podcast, Jeremy McGowan. He is a UFO experiencer, military veteran, and he lives here in Las Vegas. So he and I connected, and um, he's got plans to go out there, and he's going to take a Sky Hub out there with him. Or I don't know if he's taking it with him, or
Yeah.
exactly what the details of that are, but that's going to be interesting.
Absolutely, man. Oh, that sounds so exciting. Yeah, I'm such a geek when it comes to that stuff, and I get really excited about, you know, trying anything when it comes to, exploring the strange and mysterious, the paranormal, trying all the new tools and all the new gadgets we can throw at it and just see what happens. And Sky Hub is so cool. Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Yeah. So your interest in science fiction goes back to early childhood, or did you?
Childhood,
Oh, okay.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And I guess that's, that sparked my interest in UFOs and in extraterrestrial life and space, broadly. Just thinking about how infinite space is and the infinite possibilities that presents. And Star Trek: The Next Generation was a big one for me. When it comes to science fiction television, growing up, that's something that really impacted me and made me kind of look at the universe a little differently and start thinking about possibilities. Because the way they present the future, number one, is cool, and that's something for me that is appealing about science fiction, is imagining the future. And also the geek in me loves all the technology and the future tech that's imagined as well, that they throw in here. And Star Trek: The Next Generation has loads of that. They have loads of intelligent extraterrestrials, right? These extraterrestrial species that are just widely varying. and they've all encountered each other, and they somehow can communicate with each other, and it's just fascinating to watch. So yeah, Star Trek played a big role in sort of fueling my interest in space for sure.
That show, was that out in the 90s or
Started in '87.
87? The Next Generation?
Yeah.
Wow.
So you watch that, and even the early episodes, and watch what they were doing with special effects, and I mean, I was lost in it at the time. Like, and I watched that some of the reruns now, and I'm like, wait, that was in the late '80s. That's crazy. I mean, they did such a good job with that. But even think about movies, Back to the Future. The first in that trilogies, that was I think '85.
Wow.
And I mean, you wouldn't know from that movie because it's so well done and it seems so high tech.
Yeah.
With a flying DeLorean. I mean, the effects in that are great, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And they didn't have all the computer CGI that they have now. So they still
Right.
did a pretty good job on a lot of those movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, with Star Trek: The Next Generation, that's part of what makes it so good. For me personally, is that realism that it brings by using, a lot of models and a lot of, physical sets and things that they have on that show that weren't CG.
Yeah. Well, I even watch once in a while, I'll go watch the original series,
Hmm.
Star Trek.
Yeah.
And sometimes and I think back in those days, they used models, like really small models with matte paintings
Yeah.
in the backdrop. But some of those space based shots that they had were really amazing, even
Yeah.
for that. And that came out in the 60s, right? Late 60s.
Yeah, yeah. So watching those scenes and watching some of the space stuff and in Next Generation as well. I mean, knowing what they did with models and miniatures, it's just, I mean, it's so easy to get lost in it. It
Yeah.
looks so real.
Yeah. And so a lot of people point to the technology because that's what really science fiction is kind of focused on. You have the science part of it, and the science has to be realistic. Uh, but then you got the stories too, and you could have a great science fiction idea, but if you don't have a good story to go along with it, how far is that really going to get?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that really, separates just awful science fiction from great science fiction. It's the stories and it's the characters. I mean, you've got to have great character development and characters that you actually care about, and a great story to go with it. I don't know about you, but I am. Well, first of all, I'm a huge Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, but The Running Man is such a great movie. That's this weird kind of bizarre future, where they have prisoners playing in a television game show. That's weird and wild, and it has a lot of, I don't know. There are all sorts of Cold War things we could go into here with some of these movies, but Total Recall is one of my favorites. Another Schwarzenegger, because that is a science fiction that's in space. I mean, they go to Mars, but they deal with all of these weird topics, that you'll see recurring in a lot of science fiction. It's, collapse of civilization, rebuilding society, class struggles, global conflict, threat of, nuclear annihilation. So,
Oh yeah. So the Running Man takes place on Mars?
no, not Total Recall.
Oh, Total Recall. Okay.
Total Recall. Yeah.
Yeah. You did say Total Recall. I totally missed that part.
Yep. No, I transitioned it to Total Recall there,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. No, yeah, I love both of those movies. I'm a big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan too,
yeah.
and he seems to be like the king of sci-fi through the late 80s, early 90s, from Terminator to Predator to Total Recall. And,
Yeah, you're right,
he was
because a
doing
lot of
all the,
his action movies blend action and sci-fi. Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah, yeah. So, and the two movies you suggested, Total Recall and The Running Man, I think those are both based on Philip K. Dick novel or short
I think
stories.
you're right. I
Yeah,
think you're right, actually.
yeah. I love Philip K. Dick's work.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge reader. I
Uh-huh.
listen to audiobooks. But when I was a kid, I used to read like crazy. And so now I listen to audiobooks, but I think my love for science fiction started out in through movies. I think I started watching, early on. I don't know, is Godzilla considered science fiction?
I would think so.
Yeah, I think so, because
I would
isn't
think
he
so.
a mutated monster
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
atomic bomb? So that would be science fiction. See that that definition of what is science fiction, what is not, sometimes falls into the gray area.
Yeah.
Still trying to work out those details. What is it for you? I mean, besides Star Trek, and I think I'm a little bit older than you. I was born in '66, grew up in the '70s. So, I watched on TV. I didn't have VHS or anything like that. So I watched things on TV when they
Mhm.
were airing. So, like I said, I had the original King Kong, Godzilla movies, old, really. If you look at it now, it's kind of cheesy science fiction. But back then, when I was a kid, I used to love that stuff. What was it for you that introduced you to science fiction?
I think, it probably had a lot to do with, I guess probably my parents loved to watch a lot of movies, and growing up in the early '80s, that was a prime time for a lot of great science fiction. So that's probably what it was. I mean, Star Wars was probably my first introduction to it, I would say. The original Star Wars trilogy. That really got me into it. But yeah, just I mean, I grew up in rural, sort of the outskirts of Phoenix, way out in the middle of the desert. There was nothing there, so our entertainment was mainly just watching movies. And our weekend fun was going into town and going to the video store and renting videos and even at that time renting a VHR or VCR because we didn't have one, or beta player before that. But yeah, getting videos and then amassing our own video collection. And we just watch and rewatch all of these movies where we had all the lines memorized. So that was just kind of the way to kill time.
Yeah. Yeah, I did watch some VHS movies later on. Um, for me, it was later on because in the '70s we didn't have VCRs.
Yeah.
Uh, but once the VCRs did come out, yeah, I was a big fan of blockbuster movies. I'd go down there and hang out for, I don't know, like a library, man. I would just hang out
Yeah.
in there and look at all the cool covers
Yep.
and pick out a movie or two and then take them home and wear them out, watch them over and over.
That was huge, for I mean for every genre, but I mean for me that was huge for science fiction. Be able to go into the video store and browse the boxes, right, the cover art,
Yeah,
and get an idea for, oh, that looks a little spacey. That could be some sci-fi right there. That looks pretty good.
definitely. Yeah, and that's another thing about you talked about the artwork for comic books and how that's always been a draw. Same thing for me. I've always been a big. I'm looking at some comic books right in front of me. Part of my collection. I got a pretty good collection of comic books, but the artwork for
Nice.
me is what drew me to the comic books. The artwork, whenever I would go to the bookstore and try to find a novel to read, the artwork was always what would capture my imagination first, and then um, jump into the story and fall in love with those stories.
I know exactly what you mean because I'm a visual person for sure, and I mean, when I go to like a giant liquor store too, like Total Wine or Bevmo or something, I'm the same way. I'm just glancing at these thousands of labels and cover art basically, and that's dictating what my purchase. Well, oh, that looks like that could be good. Like a label tells you something's good, but and I with especially beer now, there's so many craft brewers and they get so creative with the labels that there's a lot that are basically like comic art on beer. And that'll draw me in right away. I'll be all, oh, that looks like a great one, I'm going to get that one. And even if I think it's pretty awful, I think I like it more than I otherwise would because it's got good art on it.
That's funny. Uh, yeah, I'm not much of a beer drinker. I do have a favorite beer. Um, it's a local brewery here in Las Vegas, and it's called Rogue. I think the name of the brewery is called Rogue, but it's the brewery is in the Mob Museum. Underneath the Mob Museum, they have a
Oh,
little
that's cool. I
a
think
little
I've been
brewery in
there.
there.
I think
Yeah,
I've been there.
yeah, and they have their own beer, and it's a hazelnut blonde that I like. But you can't find it. It's you can get it there and one or two spots in Las Vegas. It's really not easy to come by.
That makes it special though.
Yeah, but as far as the artwork on that one, I didn't really pay attention to the artwork. I didn't think it was that great, but I do know what you mean by looking at different artwork as a representation of what a product is. Are you an artist yourself?
Well, I describe myself as a creative person. I like you, I wear many hats, and my skill set has kind of been made broad over my career. So I dabble in photography, I dabble in video, I dabble in audio. I have recently started trying to illustrate more because that's not something that I've ever been good at. So I've recently started trying to work on that, and I'm trying to become an iPad artist. So using Procreate and working with some digital tools. But I am more a digital artist. That's what I've always been. I like to build things and create things in Illustrator or Photoshop, but not really don't really describe myself as an artist rather than an artistic person.
Okay. Okay, that's fair enough. Were you going to say something about the beer?
Yeah, so speaking about labels and bad beer, Roswell has this beer, the Roswell Alien beer, and it looks awesome. And when you go to Roswell, you have to get this beer because you're in Roswell. I mean, it's cool. Oh, it's so bad.
So, don't judge a beer by its cover. Is that the
Well, I
moral of
mean,
the story?
yeah, I think that is the important moral here, but I'm always willing to try it out. I'll
Sure.
reward good art.
That's a good philosophy. Yeah, I'm willing to try almost anything once. If I don't like it, I'm not really gonna try it again, though.
You learn your lesson.
Yeah,
That's good.
for sure, for sure. So going back to talking about the oh man, Total Recall. Forgot about that. Did you see the remake of it with Colin Farrell?
I did see it, and to be honest with you, I think I only saw it once, and I don't think I remember anything about it.
Wow. Okay, well, I would suggest you check it out again if you get an opportunity, because
All right,
the first time I saw it, I didn't really like it because I compared it to the
compared it to
Arnold
the
movie.
original.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a mistake because it's a
yeah,
different movie. I
yeah.
mean, similar similar concepts where he
And
gets
I
his
think
mind wiped and
hearing
that kind of
hearing
thing.
you say that, I think I remember having that reaction, and I have that reaction with a lot of remakes where I have this opinion that on its own, it's a great movie,
Yeah.
and they should have just created this new movie without trying to make it another this a movie that already happened. By tying it to something that's already been created and giving it that name, it sets these expectations, and it's really unnecessary in my opinion with a lot of these movies. And I think that was one of them, where call it something else and it's a great movie on its own.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is a very astute point. Because there are a lot of remakes, like you said, that just fall short of the expectation because it's connected with something previously.
yeah.
But then there are some remakes that just blow away the original. So, like for an example, The Thing, the John Carpenter Thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that movie is one of my favorite all time sci-fi horror, and it's based on the original The Thing from Another World, which I also like that movie,
Yeah.
but And I think in its day, it was a pretty groundbreaking achievement.
Hmm.
I just rewatched it the other day. That's why it's fresh in my mind.
That's awesome.
And the John Carpenter movie I watch like every other month or something because I like it that much.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love Carpenter so much.
Oh yeah. But to compare the two movies, I like The Thing a lot better just because the visual effect, or actually the practical effects they used in that film, incredible. The alien monster, that was all practical. They didn't do any kind of CGI in that movie. It was made in the late 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And what they did, in talking about horror, what they did with special effects with horror in the 80s, late 70s and into the 80s is just amazing. And there's
Yeah.
some great documentaries about that, show some of the behind the scenes stuff and show what some of these visual effects people accomplished. And it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many good movies we could talk about, man.
Well, speaking about remakes, I mean, what's your opinion of the Battlestar Galactica series,
Oh, I
the
love
the
it, man.
2004?
Yeah, that's a superior uh, series to the original, in my opinion. I love it.
I agree. I agree. I think they did such a good job with the visuals. First of all, I mean, it's awesome to watch through that. But the characters they have, the acting, it's really good. I never really got into the original Battlestar, but yeah, the remake, just does such a great job with that storyline.
Yeah, and I think the original. See, I watched the original on TV when it came out because I was a kid at that time, so I
Yeah.
loved it. I mean, but there were parts of it where it was a little hokey. I think there was. I might be confusing this with another series, but I think there was a robot dog in that series
I
in
don't know.
the original Battlestar Galactica. I
I
think there
don't
was a little
know.
kid who had a robot dog, and that kind of made it a little kind of goofy.
Come on, it's the future and it's science
Right,
fiction. You can do anything.
right. But the robot dog had a human inside of it, so I mean, you could tell that it wasn't. It, but I did love the series. I'm not taking anything away from it. I loved it as a kid. But the remake was more of an adult focused science
Absolutely.
fiction series, um, and they went a little bit different direction with it when they started giving the robots sentience. Those robots became sentient,
Yeah.
and in the original, the robots were just robots controlled by something else. I think other humans, evil humans, or something like that. I don't really remember because that's going so far back.
Yeah, I mean, when you give the robots total control, it gets dark fast.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, with that, since you mentioned that, because we're talking about science fiction, we touched on the Cold War a little bit. Uh, that's enough. That's good enough for me. I mean, you talked about the post-apocalyptic possibility of nuclear annihilation,
Battlestar
represented.
Galactica, collapse of civilization and rebuilding society.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But looking forward at science fiction, um, a couple of the things that we see represented really strongly in today's science fiction are artificial intelligence. Um, but where do you see the future of science fiction in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's really driven by society and, technological advances. I mean, you look with Cold War stuff, is really the arms race, the space race, the race to develop bigger and better rockets, and the onset of the space age that created a lot of these great ideas about grand space voyages and things because it was becoming maybe a thing that could happen, but it was still thought as this far off futuristic thing. When the space age started, that really started to blur the lines between science fiction and reality. So we started going to space, and then I think the ideas expanded from there. Okay, we're in space now. Now what do we do? Where can we go with that? And then we start exploring, these far off worlds with far off alien life. And, so, I mean, we're already doing space. We're dealing with robots and AI now, but when that becomes like a norm, I don't know where we go from there. I mean, we're already exploring some of these crazy, complicated ideas of like parallel universes and alternate realities. And so I don't know where you go from there, until we get a glimpse of something else that could possibly be reality. I don't know where the story goes from there.
You made so many important connections right now in your last statement, that I'd like to drill down a little bit on some of what you said, because you talked about the space race and how it was not only influenced by science fiction, because I think Wernher von Braun got his love of rockets from reading science fiction, and then the space race itself, us going into outer space, launched a whole new wave of science fiction. Um, the potential for nuclear annihilation also created a whole new genre or subgenre, which was the radioactive wasteland
Yeah.
of the post-nuclear war. So you tied those in really nicely with that statement. Um, do you think reality influences science fiction more than science fiction influences reality, or the other way around?
It's a really good question, and I think the unsatisfying answer is I think it goes both ways. And I can't tell you how many people who work at NASA I've met over the years who tell me that the reason that they got interested in space, number one, and then number two, wanted to work for NASA, is because of Star Trek. Star Trek is what gave them that love, that interest, that passion for space and for space travel and for space exploration that, brought them to the career they're in now, making Star Trek reality by working on spaceships and taking us into space and doing all this research. But also look at technology. I mean, there's so much technology that, every year there's so many articles written about how, Star Trek technology, it was depicted in Star Trek or in other science fiction, now exists. The iPhone for the longest time was equated to like a tricorder because, that's really where a lot of the inspiration comes from. But a lot of tech that's developed, is inspired by science fiction, by tech we see in science fiction. And that's, an image of the future that's been created. And so people, when they think of future tech, think about what did I see on the movie from the future? Automatic sliding doors and voice activated this. And I don't know. So I think science fiction heavily influences reality, but at the same time, I think reality has a pretty strong effect on science fiction too. And I see that a lot in UFOs. With UFOs and pop culture is something that I look at a lot. And, I even will go to like Comic Cons and give talks about UFOs and pop culture or real life X Files or things like that. But the UFOs and pop culture is interesting because I do like to look at that question with UFOs and talk about whether UFOs influence pop culture or pop culture influences UFOs, and it kind of goes both ways. There are plenty of Hollywood movies that were influenced by allegedly real life things, real life UFO incidents, um, and then there are plenty of people who like to argue that in pop culture and the general public, our opinions of UFOs and what extraterrestrials look like is influenced by what we see depicted by Hollywood. But then you go back and see where these people who made the movies got their influence, and it's from allegedly real cases. So it's a fun back and forth.
Yeah, that is an interesting tie-in. And I'm not opposed to covering UFOs on this podcast because, I mean, what's more interesting, in my opinion, than UFOs? And what are UFOs? That, I mean, there are so many um, possibilities of what they are, and they could be all of them, right?
Yeah, I think the real and logical answer to UFOs is it's a lot of everything. There's not just one answer to what are UFOs.
Yeah.
And UFOs are fascinating, and it's a fascinating thing to look at sociologically and from a general public and pop culture standpoint, because here we are in 2020 right now, and just in the past couple years, we've had the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, the Navy, all coming out with official statements, related to incidents that happened in the past decade, um, acknowledging that there are things in our airspace that we don't know what they are. We can't identify them. We can't intercept them with our best fighters, and we really can't do anything about them. They're there. We don't know what they are. That's it. And that's pretty alarming, I have to say. But still, to a lot of people, despite that, and a lot of people don't know that still, even though, if you're even lightly into this subject, you've seen a lot of these headlines happening and the New York Times articles and all this stuff. I mean, it's all over if you look. But there's still established public opinion or viewpoint is that UFOs don't exist. And we are way beyond that. It's not a conspiracy, it's not conjecture. We know it's documented. The US government and governments around the world study this stuff. There are UFOs flying around in the sky, and we have no idea what they are, and we can't do anything about them. That is the reality. So, it's funny when we're stuck back at the initial question of do UFOs exist, or are UFOs are real, when, that's not the question anymore. But for a lot of people it is. But to your point, yes, when it comes to UFOs, I think it's all the above. I think there is no one answer to what these things are. Every UFO is different.
And I don't want to, I really wanted to have you on to talk about science fiction, pop culture, and stuff like that, because I know you do UFOs on your podcast, and your podcast is amazing.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, it's one of the few podcasts that I listen to immediately when it comes out, unless I miss it. Every once in a while I miss it, but I usually have it in my downloads so that when it comes out, I listen to it right away.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, man. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. I love it because you have different perspectives on it. But again, I didn't bring you on here to talk about UFOs, man. I brought you on here to talk about science fiction, pop culture, and but I do have one other question. Do you think people who believe UFOs are not real even deserve the time it takes to explain to them why they need to change their opinion?
I totally get that question, and no, that's fine. And I think a lot of that comes down to just what the established norms are, and for whatever reason, a lot of people are stuck in what the norms have been, or what they've always been told. And for a lot of people, when I hear that this resistance or refusal to believe that UFOs exist, um, they have no interest in looking into it for themselves and looking at the information and evidence that is out there. And like I said, not like conspiracy websites, not things that Uncle Jim Bob says, but what your own government says. you know, uh, there's just this refusal to have the mind changed on an issue like this. And a lot of the common responses are, if they existed, we'd see it on the news, or we'd hear about it from the military. Well, that happens all the time. The military talks about UFOs all the time. The news media outlets around the world cover UFOs every single day. It's there. You just don't look at it. And I get that. I get that. We hyper focus on the things that we're interested in, or the things that we normally look at or follow. For me, if something happened with I don't know, Beyonce or the Kardashians, like I would have no idea, because if I'm scrolling and I see something about that, it's not my interest. I keep scrolling. I'm not going to click on it and read an article about it, because that's not my interest. So I get it. If people see something about UFOs, they probably roll their eyes when they see UFO and say, I don't care about that because that's not real. And they move on. I get it. People focus on what they're interested in. And until they take the time to do the research for themselves, then they're not going to change their minds. And you know what? For somebody like me who dedicates a lot of time to researching and writing about this topic, I sound like a broken record a lot of times, but I love to remind people in the UFO field that it's not mine or anybody else's role or responsibility to change the minds of anybody when it comes to UFOs, because UFOs is not a religion. It doesn't need me or anybody else to convert people to our side of belief and force people to believe a certain way, because UFOs is not a religion. If people want to look into it and, do their own research and have their minds changed, that's great. Good for them. They don't need to. And I don't need to waste my time trying to convince them. My role, as I see it, is to put out information, to share information that I uncover, or bring people along my journey, because UFOs and anything strange and paranormal, it's an individual journey. It's different for everybody. We all have to take responsibility and bring in information that's presented to us, and listen to different people presenting that information, and decide for ourselves individually what information we're going to assimilate into our beliefs, and let that, uh, change or modify, or have no effect at all on the beliefs that we have. Because at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff that is still in the mysterious realm of the paranormal, it is a belief. I said it's not a religion, and it certainly is not, but it still comes down to belief. It's what we individually choose to believe, and what we choose to do with that information we're presented. So I present information and let people make up their own minds.
Fair enough. That's a fair answer. Well thought out. It sounds like you have had that conversation with other people before.
Oh, it's something that comes up a lot, and it's something that I think about a lot. But yeah, it is something that can really be frustrating for a lot of people in the UFO field, especially when they first get into it. They get excited because they're discovering all this information for the first time, and they want to share it with everybody, and they can't understand why people aren't getting as excited as they are. But in the end, we have to understand that we're all individuals. We have our own individual likes and dislikes, and the things we're interested in, and people are going to come to it on their own time, or not at all. And if they don't, that's fine. It doesn't affect me at all.
I'm one of those people that's pretty enthusiastic about it, and I will still talk to people uh, about UFOs being real, and they look at me like I'm weird, like I'm crazy, and I just say, "Hey, man, it's in the news." I'm not reporting it. I'm just telling you what I saw and
Absolutely.
what's being reported. Uh, they still look at me like I'm weird. Like, yeah, okay, 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 little Andy, you,
Yep.
you
No,
go on and
the
believe
this
what you want to believe.
the stigma around that topic is still very real and very strong.
Yeah, unfortunately. So again, that's the last question I have on you for UFOs. Um, any other questions I have, maybe I will bring you back on and drill you about 100 other questions I have.
Well, that sounds like a plan to me. But if you want to loop back to science fiction for a little bit, we can do that, because I could talk about a couple of things. Like one of my favorite pop culture things to bring up is, well, Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg is an interesting guy in that he is hugely interested in the UFO topic and extraterrestrials. And yes, he did make make ET the movie. Um, the interesting thing about ET that I always love to bring up is that his original concept for that was something much darker, something much more sinister. And the original concept for ET was this creepy looking creature that would have scared children, but when they decided to make ET more kid friendly, that went away. But that creepy image uh, became gremlins, the creatures we see in Gremlins. And the thing about that creature is that it's based off of the UFO incident that happened in 1955, the Kelly Hopkinsville, Kentucky incident, where this family was terrorized by these 3 foot tall aliens with these upright pointy ears and claws, and the family had like a shotgun battle with them because they were bouncing around outside and they could float through the air, and they were these little green guys. So they kind of helped popularize the little green men, calling aliens little green men. It wasn't the origin, but it popularized it. But yeah, those creatures are, essentially gremlins. They became what we see in Gremlins. So that's one of Spielberg's things. It was based off, kind of based off a real encounter. But close encounters, that's heavily influenced by reality. um, J. Allen Hynek, who was the government science advisor for Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO investigation, has a cameo in that movie. And the scientist in that movie, the main scientist, is based off of Jacques Vallée, who is an author and legendary UFO researcher. So there's lots of reality in that movie.
One of my favorite movies. I saw it when I was a kid, and some people say that movie is considered a docudrama
Right.
because it has so much just uh, reality in it, and it hits on so many of the UFO tropes, the UFO world tropes, like the government conspiracy, the cattle mutilations was represented in there by all the, well, they didn't show the mutilations themselves, but all the cows on the side of the road, But the thing that really stands out for me in that movie is the visual or the special effects that they did. Again,
Yes.
all practical, an incredible display of filmmaking genius, in my opinion.
And it was actually one of the first, if not the first, depiction of a typical gray alien.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah, and they
interesting.
they took they took it, I think, from descriptions they read in witness descriptions from people who claim they encountered aliens.
Wow. Yeah, that's another movie I could watch, endless number of times, just because, well, the soundtrack is brilliant. The visuals in that movie are stunning, and you know, the only complaint that I had when I was younger, I don't, it does bother me now, but the only complaint I had when I was younger is why weren't there more UFOs in that movie? But you have this, I don't know, it was like 10 or 15 minutes of UFOs buzzing around the mountains in what is that place, Devil's Tower,
Right.
Wyoming, right?
I think it's
And
Wyoming.
yeah, I think it's Wyoming, but yeah, it's just an incredible display of filmmaking. Yeah,
Yeah.
one of my favorite movies right there.
Oh, that movie is so well done. Um, it's funny, but I love to, when I think about my favorite UFO movies, one that probably doesn't come to mind for a lot of people, but it's definitely one of mine, is Disney's Flight of the Navigator. Because, and I didn't grasp it, at the time when I watched this, when it came out. But it is an alien abduction movie, right? I mean, it's a UFO movie. It's an alien abduction movie where this, advanced technology, this technological alien abducts this boy. And the boy has missing time, and then the government takes him and wants to perform tests on him. And it's very interesting, how it puts a lot of reality, alleged reality, stories from alleged abductees, and I don't think it's been officially confirmed, but it's been speculated that it's based off a real incident from a guy named Daniel Fry from 1949, I think. A lot of parallels there. In this case, the guy claims that a ship landed in front of him on the 4th of July in Flight of the Navigator that takes place on the 4th of July. Um, this guy claims that when he touched the metal UFO, the metal ship, he heard the voice of an alien named Alan, who sounded very human. And in Flight of the Navigator, the alien's name is Max. He calls him Max, and he has a very human voice, if you think Paul Rubin has a human voice. uh, and this guy, Daniel Fry, was invited aboard the UFO, and he claims that it took him from New Mexico to New York City in 30 minutes, and he could see everything below him as he flew. Like the metal ship became transparent, and you see that in Flight of the Navigator. So
That is a theme that I've heard in several abduction cases, in recounts of abduction cases, that the craft becomes transparent. And you do see that in there's a couple of movies where you see that represented. And I just saw a movie where that was done really well. And I cannot remember the name of the movie, but that is such a cool idea to have a spacecraft, or even if it was a plane, where you'd have the skin of the craft that you're flying in just fade away, and you're seeing outside, of where you're traveling. That would
I think
be.
that's so cool. And they're actually working on like real life tech to do that. They talked about doing that on like airliners of the future, right? It's basically a windowless cabin, but digitally they project what's outside, and it sort of encompasses the walls of the plane. So it's like you're just floating through the air. It's amazing.
So that's an interesting idea. And here's my I don't know, my skepticism, my skeptical brain.
Yeah.
Okay, how long is it going to take for people to have that experience, and it no longer has that wow factor? You know,
Right.
because people fly, thousands of miles a year, and how many flights are they going to be on a plane where they can look out and see, up in the sky like
Everything.
they're flying like
Yep.
Superman, and
Yep.
then sooner or later they're just like, no big deal. I'm going to watch that movie or read this book instead.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I'm sure it'll happen pretty fast. I mean, we as humans, especially these days, have short attention spans, and after we've experienced something, we're on to the next thing. So, yeah, sadly, I can see that wow factor going away pretty fast. But man, I welcome it. I
Oh
would
yeah,
love that.
yeah. That see again, technology taking its ideas from science fiction, right?
Yeah.
Or I mean, if you consider alien abductions real, taking it from reality,
Right.
and
Could
science
go both
fiction taking the
ways.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you or are you a fan of the Netflix series Stranger Things?
Oh yeah, yeah. I love that show.
Yeah, so that's another one that, talking
That's
about,
that's right in line with the Cold War.
yeah, absolutely. Looking at the Montauk Project, if that's even a real thing, which maybe it is, but more so with MK Ultra, that is right in with the Cold War, the CIA mind control program in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, where they administer psychoactive drugs like LSD to test subjects. They'd use sensory deprivation. You see that in Stranger Things with the sensory deprivation tanks, torture, and other awful things. And a lot of the subjects they did this to were U.S. soldiers, right? Unknowingly giving soldiers drugs, but they did it to college students, homeless people, and a wide variety of others who they considered expendable. And they even placed people, these expendable people, in secret detention camps that they created. And this isn't something that was like underground and happening in like dark alleys and stuff. It was happening at major universities and hospitals and prisons. It was just horrific. And, it was all in the name of mind control and, working against the Soviets, really trying to come up with things to combat the Soviets. But yeah, I mean, it resulted in Senate hearings in the late 70s and had lawsuits that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. I mean, it is a very real thing. And again, this is something that, you know, if people don't look into, they think, not interested in that. That's a bunch of silly stuff like UFOs. But guys, the documents are there. So many documents. This was a CIA program, and you can go and find all sorts of documents that were only really declassified in the past 20 years, I think. But there's so much documentation about it. It was really, really awful.
Yeah, it's a little bit mind blowing when you think about some of the programs that the U.S. government funded and started in the pursuit of defeating communism. It's almost as if they chose to become the evil that they were fighting to defeat that evil.
Right.
Luckily, there were some people who decided to pull back from those ideas, but not before many people had gotten hurt and died because of it.
Yeah.
LSD was the drug that was used in a lot of that early MK Ultra trials,
Yeah.
and that drug it changes people's perspective in a way that sometimes doesn't end well. And without having, that's why we have the FDA. Those drugs have to be tested before they're distributed to the public.
Mm-hmm.
So you hear people railing against government oversight and regulatory bodies like the FDA, but those things really are there to protect us
Yeah.
from things like the MK Ultra debacle.
Yeah. Well said.
So, but when you see those things done in science fiction, again, that is art emulating or what is the term?
Imitating. Yeah.
Imitating real life. Uh, it's fun to watch, in a movie if it's fiction, but it's disturbing to find out that actually really happened. That's a big topic that I am determined to cover at some point because I've done a lot of research on that area.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't know if I'm going to have a guest on or if I'm going to do a monologue episode for that, but there's a ton, like you said, there's a ton of research out there on that topic.
Yeah, lots of government documentation. So if you want to dive into it, it's pretty fascinating, pretty fun, and pretty terrifying.
Have you done anything on your show about the MK Ultra program?
A little bit here and there, and certainly it's something I like to talk about a lot at Comic Cons and stuff, because again, like the general public doesn't really know about that. With Stranger Things being so popular right now, that's a fun one to bring up with people. It really, really opens a lot of eyes and gets a lot of jaws on the floor. People find it hard to believe that our government could do something like that. And I encountered that with current UFO issues too, where things will happen, and people are resistant to the idea that our government would put its own soldiers in harm's way.
We're the good guys,
Well,
man. We don't hurt our own
yeah.
people.
So, well, they've done it many times before. So
Yeah, for sure. Would you like to share something in a current project that you're working on and getting ready to drop on the public, or any upcoming appearances that you're going to be doing anytime soon?
yeah, sure. So unfortunately, because of pandemic times, It's really canceled, any fun travel or appearances or anything like that. So that's not happening anytime soon. But I have tried to start putting out more content. And like I said, my interests are broad, so I do try to keep busy with UFOs, and I do have my UFO podcast, and that is the focus of what I do mostly. But I do have these other interests, and because of that, I recently launched a new web series called The Rogue Planet Show, and that is more broad in its scope, bringing in a lot of, like I mentioned, my other interests, so ghosts and cryptozoology, different monsters and local lore and different fun things like ghost hunts and things that me and my team at Rogue Planet like to do. So we recently launched that on our YouTube channel. I also relaunched a show I do with my friend, author and spaceflight historian Amy Shira Title, and that is called the Punk Rocker Moon Stomper Program. And that came together, as just sort of this hodgepodge show where we can blend our shared interests of punk music, ska music, space, booze, animals, video games, whatever else we want to talk about. And we have guests on to talk about all these things with us. And it's interesting because we'll bring in, say, a musician, like a punk musician, who also has an interest in space. And we had somebody on the show, before we rebooted it, who is a guy in a punk band, but when he's on tour, he has a telescope on the tour bus with him because he's an astronomy junkie. And that kind of thing is fun to hear, because in these interviews, anytime this person is interviewed, usually interviewed about his band, the music he plays, not really about space and astronomy and the telescope he keeps on the bus. So it's bringing these people in who have our shared interests, and talking about the things that people don't necessarily know them for, like brewers who have an interest in space, or space people who have an interest in punk rock. So kind of a fun show, and it is a casual conversational thing that is really just kind of a release for me, to be able to have those casual conversations rather than something more serious, more scripted, more researched, like I like to do with UFO topics. But then I mentioned at the top, I'm working on a new book, and it's a slow process. It's really hard for me these days to get into the writing headspace, but I do have a new UFO book in the works. I wanted to have it ready by the end of the year. I don't think that's going to happen, but hopefully shortly after. But it sort of picks up where my previous book left off. My first book was called Only Weirdos See UFOs, and it really highlighted a lot of the things we've talked about today, and that is the public's misperception about UFOs and extraterrestrial life, because the established perception in the public is that UFOs do not exist. And my book goes through and illustrates how we know UFOs do exist, and goes through and lists some people, some scientists, some government officials, some military personnel, some college professors, just everyday people who either have had experiences, whether UFO sightings or alleged contact with extraterrestrials, or their thoughts on the topic as a whole, and goes in to show how scientists are interested in the topic and do actively research it. Governments around the world actively research it. So my new book kind of spins off that, but also presents UFOs in an approachable way. Because I think anybody getting into the UFO topic for the first time, when they start looking into the UFO research community, they look at a lot of the books that are out there, they look at a lot of the presentations being given by established researchers. It can be off-putting. It can be, a little, I don't know, really not approachable, because some people, if not a lot of people, who are in the UFO research community like to make UFOs a lot more complicated than they need to be. Yes, they can get very complex, like any topic in the world. You can, get philosophical and get, super crazy with any topic. But UFOs don't need to be that way, and certainly not for entering this field and doing your own research. So what I'm doing is providing not a dumbed down version of UFOs by any means, but by presenting UFOs in an honest, straightforward fashion to let people know that UFOs aren't as complicated as some make it out to be, and kind of just laying UFOs out there and saying, here's what we know, here are the possibilities, and a lot of the ideas I shared with you about UFOs being very individual and being something that is an individual journey for us all, and we all have to come to our own conclusions. So that's essentially what the book will be.
Well, that's quite a workload you got there for being a retired guy.
Well, that on top of, I do have a full-time job. So yeah, like I said, I'm a creative person. And if I'm not doing a project, I get a little stir crazy. So I love being creative. And certainly with the web series, that's super fun because I'm a video guy. I love being able to create that visual content. And with the book, I mean, I enjoy writing, but like I said, I got to be in the right headspace to really get into the writing mode. I do a lot of writing, for my day job, and certainly writing about UFOs is more fun. But still, I'm a visual person, and like seeing words on a page is not as fun for me as seeing like a video come together, or seeing like something that's a piece of art in Photoshop or something. So even if I start going down the path of writing some more on the book, I veer over to one of the more visual mediums.
Yeah, and well, I got to say that the visuals that you do use, you incorporate into your videos and even on your website. It's one of the things that attracted me to your work, because it's you use very like mellow mid tones in your artwork, so it's not really like in, you remember like in 50s sci-fi. I'm thinking like the movie poster for War of the Worlds, where the real bright neon colors. That's not what you
I know
have.
exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about. Yeah.
your artwork, your color tones are just a lot more mellow, a lot soothing, and it really drew me to you, to the work that you're doing. Um, so just kudos for that. Keep going that direction because you're doing something right.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. And I mean, I love a lot of your work and your photography, and I think that you and I are going to have to get together sometime and do some shooting in Nevada, because Nevada is wonderfully strange. I love Nevada. I guess before pandemic times, I was in Vegas all the time. I love Vegas. I'm in Phoenix, so Vegas is an easy playground for me. So,
Cool. Yeah,
but
for sure. I am open to that. Um, I would even like to go down to that neck of the woods because I have a sister and a brother who live down in that area.
oh, that's
Mesa,
awesome.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
you're
I sure do.
practically
Yeah, I'm in
neighbors
I'm
of
in
you.
Phoenix, so yeah, it's right here. And yeah, you come, we'll hook up with my fellow Rogue Planeteer Shane Hurd, and we'll do some sky watching and
Oh
try to
yeah,
find
for
some
sure.
UFOs.
And so, just before I cut you loose, how can people find your work?
Everything I do can usually be found at rogueplanet.tv. That's the website. That's kind of the hub for everything creative that we do. I'm also on Twitter at Acecentric. That's ACECENTRIC.
What does that mean?
So the part I left out from the start of my wonderful career is my actual career started out in the music industry, and it's a nickname that Ace. My name is Jason, and Ace is a nickname for Jason, because if you say Jason, Ace,
Mhm.
it's in there.
Okay.
So Ace is just something that the band started calling me. That I was working with when I was producing concerts, or I had a concert venue, and they knew me as Ace in Phoenix. So Ace kind of became my nickname in the music world. And then when I started doing things in the digital world, I started. I think I'm trying to recall the origin of this now. You got me thinking. This is a really good exercise here, but I think it's because I started putting things online that were my interest, things that were around my individual interests. So ace centric, all
Got
things
it.
that are centric to me. So
It that brought it all together.
yep.
Eccentric. Okay. Hey, Jason, I appreciate you doing this, man. And I think that's about it. We can wrap it up right here. Thank you for coming on Dead Hand Radio, and hopefully you'll come back on again.
Anytime you need me, buddy, happy to help.
Awesome. Take care.